A good talk. Welcome to another lesson in Derech HaShem, the way of God. We're in the fourth section, in the middle of chapter 7, about periodic observances, times, discussing different times. So we spoke at length in last lesson about time in general, the creation of time, and about Shabbos. And we're continuing now. We're up to paragraph 5. We're on page 337 in the Feldheim edition, about other segments of time that exist and the different holidays for those times. Paragraph 5. The highest wisdom also decreed to give Israel additional sanctity by granting them holy days other than Shabbos, when the Jew receives various levels of holiness. So on Shabbos, we receive a level of holiness. We connect to HaShem, we receive all the blessings for that week. And besides for that, there's other times during the year of holiness. Holiness, the definition of the word, kodesh, holy, means to be set aside. We set aside a segment of time from the regular weekday, mundane life, the regular life. We're not together, unified, intimate. We're not like that on a regular basis. Nobody can. So we come close to HaShem every Shabbos, a intimacy, a oneness, and we bring that blessing to the week. Similarly, different times during the year, we also have a certain different levels of sanctity when we come close to HaShem and bring that, and we receive from HaShem levels of holiness. This has to be explained. What more is there? What's more than Shabbos? None of these holy days, however, have as much influence and sanctity as Shabbos. Shabbos is the main. That's the source of all blessing is Shabbos. So we have to understand these are going to be lower levels, but what are they exactly? And how do we understand the different segments of time? So let's read the paragraph, and with Hashem's help, we'll try to expound on it. The degree to which a person must abstain from worldly occupations on these days depends on the level of their influence. Every day of sanctity, we have when we say you can't do this and you can't, all these laws we can't do, the rules, what we can't do is because there's such a oneness with Hashem, so of course there's more rules. And I offer you as a parable, the same way there's infinite rules of the things that you can't do on your wedding day. You know why? Because all those things are inappropriate. You're supposed to be with your bride on the wedding day. So you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do the other thing, you don't do any other things. And that's really what Shabbos is, a total set aside, just me and you, my love, none of this other stuff. So that's the highest level. There are other levels of sanctity. I would compare it, let's say, to, we'll see, these are the exact comparisons to a wedding, a anniversary celebration. It's not the same. You can't, you have to dress a certain way. You have to, no, there's not so rigid guidelines, but there are certain things that you have to do. This is our celebration. You can't just do whatever you feel like. So it's different guidelines, not as rigid, not as severe. But again, it's in the context of a loving relationship. It's not rules and regulations. So that's what it means that there's the different level that we abstain from other activities depends obviously on how much are we together at this point. Is it the once in a lifetime, this is it, we're set aside? Or is it something where it's necessary every week? We must have a day just for us. Nothing else. It's the basis of our relationship. Or it's a yearly celebration of something really important. There might be a bigger build-up to it, a greater expression of joy, but the rules aren't as severe because if you miss it, it's not there. You have your basic relationship in Shabbos. Various types of work are therefore forbidden on many of these days. Not all. We'll see. Each day has a different level of which work is forbidden. Yom Kippur is the highest of these holy days, and therefore the prohibition against work is the most severe. Yom Kippur is comparable to Shabbos. It's called in the Torah Shabbat, Shabbaton. It's the Shabbos of Sabbath of Sabbaths, and that has the most severe laws because that's the highest of any festival. It's like the Sabbath is to a weekday, so the Shabbaton, Yom Kippur is to the other festivals. We'll talk more about this in a minute with Hashem's help, but just already to throw this out there, we just said that Yom Kippur is like Sabbath. Would anyone like to guess how many days of festival are there besides for Yom Kippur? Would it surprise you that just like the Sabbath has 6 weekdays, so too Yom Kippur, which is the Sabbath of Sabbaths, has set 6 other festival days. Isn't that interesting? We'll try to expound on that in a minute. It's exactly paralleled. This is what we are taught in our sages. The same way we have weekdays and a Sabbath, we have festival days and the Sabbath of the festivals, which is Yom Kippur. So that's the highest level of oneness. We can't do anything just like on the Sabbath. Below this are the other festivals, which there are 6 days, the 2 days on Passover, first and last. There's Shavuos, 2 days of Sukkot, the first and the last. And then there's Rosh Hashanah. So those are 6 festival days, besides for the festival of the Sabbath of Sabbaths called Yom Kippur. So the other 6 festival days on a lower level. They're festivals. They're a lower level than Yom Kippur. What we'll talk about in detail, but just he's not going to say too much now. Just to know what it is, you're allowed to do what's necessary for eating, what's necessary for the festival. There's certain leniencies. You don't have to have everything prepared beforehand. You can do certain things on the festival. Shabbos is kind of like a wedding. You take care of everything before. There's no calling the photographer by the wedding. You took care of everything, all the plans and preparations before. That's why Hashem says explicitly, Hichinu, you prepare for Shabbos. The whole week we're preparing for Shabbos. That's really our whole life, is preparing for our relationship to be together with Hashem. As Hashem did when he created the world, it was 6 days preparing for the celebration of the relationship with Adam and Eve on that first Shabbos. And that's what we do the whole week, every week. We live with Hashem all the time, building up to be with him with that oneness on Shabbos. So those are the other festival days. On a still lower level are the intermediate days called Chol HaMoed. Those are on Sukkot and Pesach. Between the first and last days, we have the middle days, which are not Yontiv, but they're not weekday. They're in the middle. It's called Chol HaMoed. On one hand, it's Chol. The other hand, it's a Moed. So those are complicated laws, but those are really the most basic laws, which I advise everybody, if you're not holding on that level of Shabbos observance, this is the most basic level of set aside to be with God, is the laws of Chol HaMoed. The basic category on Chol HaMoed is, if it's nothing to do with the Moed, then don't do it. If it's a tircha, it's taking you away, then don't do it. But if you're cooking a meal for the Moed, you're getting dressed, you're cleaning your clothes, things that you're doing for the sake of the celebration, then that's fine. That you could do on Chol HaMoed. There's a lot of details, obviously, but that's the basic category of work. Anything you need for the Moed is okay. That's the lower level work of Chol HaMoed. What's an even lower level is the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, when only women abstain from work. So he doesn't go into this at all, but the reason is, I'm sure anyone reading this, why women? So the reason for this is the celebration of a festival called Rosh Chodesh. Hashem, we never talk about coulda, woulda, shoulda, only if there's something practical. And there is something practical here. It coulda, woulda, should have been a real festival like the 3 festivals. Just like there's 3 festivals for the patriarchs, there should have, would have, could have been 12 festivals for the 12 tribes. Those are the 12 first days of the month. That represents bringing the light, like the patriarchs, bring that light into this world. Everything in the world is 12. So bring it into the 12 hours, the 12 months, the 12 tribes of the world, to bring that light in and to sanctify our life in this world. But because of the sin of the golden calf, we're not at that level of sanctification of the physical. We have a separate physical life. We have to try to raise it up, but it's not sanctified. It's weekday. And that's why we don't have the festival of Rosh Chodesh. However, women, not a single woman was involved in the sin of the golden calf. That's this understanding that women have, the maturity, what people today call it, of practical application of knowledge to this world. Women are much more practical. They heard at Sinai not to do idolatry. They understood it practically, and not a single woman did the golden calf. Men, they heard it, but they needed the tablets to engrave it on their hearts to be more practical. So many men fell in the golden calf. And at the end of the day, we're one people, and we are missing. We're missing in that festival. We're missing in the sanctity of our physicality. But women are on a higher spiritual level. Their physicality is more sanctified. That's why there's many mitzvot that women don't need. They were created in, like they say, the blessing every morning. Asani kirtzono. I'm with God's ratzon. I'm in sync with him. Women understand practically how to live. They don't need the fringes. They don't need the phylacteries. They don't need all these things. Men, they don't need the cutting of any circumcision. They don't need that. They're already in the covenant. They don't need the reminders. So that's the differences. So that's why women celebrate Rosh Chodesh, because they didn't do the golden calf. And finally, there are Hanukkah and Purim. It's really interesting. Those are festivals, even though there's nothing in the Torah about that. It's all rabbinical. It's a really important concept. Those are also called godly festivals. These are through prophets. They're through our sages. And they're real. And they accomplish. It's really important to understand this, to appreciate the difference between these festivals and, let's say, a festival like they celebrate today of the Independence Day of Israel, or Independence Day of America on July 4th. Any such celebration, I'm not against any of them, but it's not the level of Hanukkah and Purim. These are like godly festivals, as we'll see in paragraph 6, what the difference is between a festival that's with the guidance of God, that we should institute this in the Jewish calendar, and something that on our own we've decided, oh, this is a wonderful day, let's celebrate. There's a big difference, as we'll see in paragraph 6. In any case, Hanukkah and Purim, since they're not biblical at all, it's all from the Jewish people, from the rabbis, so then work is not curtailed at all. It's not that sanctity that God did. We're doing it on our own. So there's no limitations from HaShem about work. It's all what we come to HaShem with. On Hanukkah, what do we do on Hanukkah and Purim? On Hanukkah, thanks are offered. And in addition to this, Purim is a time of joy. So they're both times of thanks. Hanukkah is more of an internal rebuilding ourselves. It's what's called Hoid. It's rebuilding yourself internally, praising Hashem. And Purim is a time of going out. It's called Netzach, to go out and give and be joyous. So those are the differences of Hanukkah and Purim, but neither one have any restrictions from Hashem of can't do anything else. It's coming from the people, for the people. It's part of the Jewish people raising themselves up to be closer to Hashem. All these levels depend on the particular sustenance granted, which is the spiritual light that shines on that particular day, which is what's going to be in paragraph 6, that on each festival through the year, there's a certain light that Hashem gives for that festival. We'll talk about in a minute. Before we do, I want to share with you a really deep insight. Ramchal spoke very general here about all the different festivals of time. I'd like to share with you the revelations from Hashem to this world are really pretty simple. There's the 10 commandments, but there's the 6 days and then Shabbos. The 7 days, those are the 7 revelations, like the 7 Noahide laws. Those are the 7 basic attributes of God It's what we're working now in the Sfirat HaOmer. Every day we're working on another attribute from the 7 categories of attributes. So those are the 7 mitzvahs. Everything is 7. There's 6 and 1. So we spoke about this in the last lesson, how the days of the week are 6 and then there's Shabbos. And the Ramchal told us something so fascinating that just like it is in the week, also that's how it is in the history of the world. So he went from the extreme of days to thousands of years. The 6,000 years is like the 6 days of the week. And the 7,000 is like Shabbos, the 7th day of the week, which we spoke about. Really interesting. It's not his, that's what our sages tell us. So I just want to share with you what we mentioned before, that this is also true, not just from the extremes of days to thousands of years, but it's also true on every segment of time. So what we mentioned now in the festivals, for instance, just like the 6 days of the week and then Shabbos, there are 6 days of festivals. Each festival we're going to discuss in paragraph 6, how they raise us up on a yearly level with HaShem, celebrating what happened before and what's continuing to happen now on our new level of existence with HaShem, a Shana. The Hebrew word Shana means to change. Every year is a change. It's a whole new level. It's like a graduation every Nisan, and we're starting Rosh Chodesh. We're starting all new, a whole new year, a whole new curriculum of growth. Every Shana. There's in Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, and Nisan. There's curriculums of growth. That's what a Shana is. So in the Shana, the same way on a week, every week we have the 6 and the 1. Every year we have 6 festival days and the 1 of Yom Kippur, which is that major change. But I want you to recognize it's actually much more than that. The 6 and the 1 is in every segment of time. This is also true. The way Shabbos works, this is a bit complicated, so I hope I don't lose everyone, but we'll try it. The way Shabbos works, there's 6 and 1 for a Shabbos, but in every month we have 4, 6 and 1. We have 4 Shabboses. There's 6 days of the week, and then Shabbos. So there's 2 while the moon is getting bigger, of 6 and 1, 6 and 1. Then there's 2 when the moon is getting smaller. These are the 28 days. Which is referred to in the book of Ecclesiastes as 28 times. There's 14 ace for this, 14 times of good where things are getting better and better, and 14 for when it's getting less and less. And these 14 on each side I'll show you something really fascinating. A hand in Hebrew is called a yad. A yad. A hand is called a yad. Now, the palm, this is called the kaf hayad. The yad itself are the fingers here to here. Now, how many parts are there for the 5 fingers, not the palm? How many parts are there? How many bones are there? How many parts? So if you look carefully, each finger from the 4 fingers has 3 parts. That's 12. And the thumb has 2 parts. That's 14. The numerical value of yad is 14. Yud is 10. Dalet is 4. A hand is 14 parts. There's the right hand, that's 14 of kindness. That's the 14 days of the moon is getting bigger and bigger. And then there's 14 days on the left hand, that's judgment. That's when things are getting less and less. Those are the 2 hands, the 14. Now, the 5, the fingers also represent, as we mentioned, there's 2 weeks. Each week has 6 days, that's 12. Well, that's these 4 fingers are the 12 for the 2 weeks of the first 2 weeks of the month. And the thumb are the 2 Shabbos. I want to show you this, something really fascinating. It says in our oral Torah that we have 5 fingers on each hand exactly paralleled to the 5 senses that we have. And each finger was given to service one of our senses. For example, the small the pinky finger, was given to service our ears, the sense of hearing, and then to clean out the ear and make the ears nice and to fix the ears. That's what the pinkies are for. The what we call the ring finger, HaShem made for the purpose of servicing our eyes. When we want to clean the eyes, we're to use this finger. That's what it was made for, to service the eyes. The middle finger, HaShem made to service the sense. One of our 5 senses is touch. The middle finger reaches the furthest. You want to scratch your back, use the middle finger. That's what reaches the furthest. That's for the sense of touch. The pointer finger was made to service our nose. That's how we pick our nose, is with the pointer finger. That's what they're for. And to service your mouth, you use your thumb. That's why babies suck their thumb. The thumb was made to service the mouth, to clean out your mouth with your thumb. Isn't that interesting? Well, you should also know that we have 7 holes in our head, which are parallel to the 7 days of the week. This is explicit. And from the 7 days of the week, the mouth is the one that's parallel to Shabbos. So isn't that interesting that the thumbs were created for the mouth, which is Shabbos? The 2 thumbs are the 2 Shabbosos of the year. So we have always the 6 and 6. Shabbos receives everything from the week and it brings the blessing for the next. Then there's another 6 and 6 on the other end. That same exact framework of time that's for the weeks of the month is exactly parallel. It says this in oral Torah, exactly parallel in our day. The day is also like that. Every day has the 6 and 6 of daytime, when the sun is getting bigger and then lower, and then there's the 6 and 6 of the nighttime. The Shabbos is not part of it. That's separate. That's what receives it all. It's the blessing for all. But the same exact structure of the 6 revelations applies on a daily basis, and it applies on a yearly basis. The 6 months of the solar calendar of the summer, the 6 months of the solar calendar winter, and on the other side, there's the 6 months of the lunar calendar or night, and the 6 months on the other. So again, the 4 categories of 6. If you look in the depth of time, you'll see that every segment of time is parallel to these revelations. And the 4 revelations of 6 are all from the 4 letters of Hashem's name. And the truth is, if you just understand the depth of the Torah, every single thing in the world is exact, it's structured, it's perfect the way Hashem created it. Sorry if I went off on a tangent. Really fascinating things. So paragraph 6, to appreciate what every festival is. It's not just remembering the day, like July. Let's remember independence of America or independence of Israel. It's a wonderful thing. I'm not saying not to celebrate. Celebrate, be joyous. Well, what you do, I don't know. People make barbecues, whatever. But let's see, when we have a festival in Judaism, it's a completely different concept than the secular concept of a festival. Look at paragraph 6. Besides the sanctification means set aside. We're celebrating something with Hashem. Besides for that exists to various degrees, depending on the holiness of each particular day, there is another concept that is specific to each one. On each of these special days, something happened whereby at this time, a great rectification was accomplished and a great light shone. It's something major happened in history. Now, you might think, okay, we want to remember that. Let's remember what happened. So we'll set aside a day to be with Hashem and talk about what happened. Wasn't that amazing? The pilgrims with the turkeys, yay. No, there's much, much more than that. The highest wisdom decreed, listen to this, that on every anniversary of this period, a counterpart of its original light should shine forth. The same light that made it happen back then is happening again right here and now. And the results of its rectification renewed to those who accept it. Anybody who connects to the Jewish calendar, it's alive. The calendar's alive. We're reliving these things that happen, and that the godly light that happened back then is happening again and again every single year. We're going through a process, a curriculum of growth. It's not a lower level than what was. It's a higher level. We've continued from what was. We are therefore commanded to observe Passover, with all its rituals to recall the Exodus. What does it mean? Remember this, remember the Paschal lamb and the matzahs and the maror and remember. It's not just remember. At the time of the Exodus, we experienced an extremely great rectification, and therefore, on the anniversary of this event, there shines forth a light that parallels the one that illuminated us then. Since the results of that rectification are renewed in us, we are obliged to keep all these rituals. He's going to explain in the next chapter about what happens on Passover with the matzahs, with the chametz, but it's exactly that. The same way we left Egypt and we whatever happened with the matzah, whatever happened with the Paschal lamb then, it happens again this year. We all should have left our Egypt. We should have left whatever was holding us back in Mitzrayim, and we should have a higher level of dignity of speaking with Passover Pesach, and we should come to a higher level of holiness. And now we're entering the month of Iyar with this Pesach Sheni or Pesach Katan. I have a lesson about that. We're going to learn about it, how we're going to complete our exodus from Egypt, purify anything that's missing in us. And then we're going to have the month of Sivan. We're going to receive the Torah. All these things happen again. Oh, he's going to say it right now. Shavuos, likewise, that's next month, involves a great rectification, since it is the time when the Torah was given. It's not just HaShem gave it then, he gives it again now. The same way we stood at Sinai then and connected, there was a tremendous light. That light comes now, and we're working every single day during this period for 49 days, preparing exactly like a woman who goes to mikvah and she purifies herself, getting ready for her marriage. That's what the Jewish people are doing now. Righteous Jews are all doing this every day, purifying their character, getting ready for the greatest day of the year, Shavuos. We're going to celebrate receiving the Torah, the greatest day in history. Sinai, the revelation. Well, it wasn't a one-time thing. It's every year. We have again that revelation, that rectification that happened on Sinai. Also, the festival of Sukkot. Sukkot involves the clouds of glory, as it is written in Leviticus 23, verse 43, that future generations may know that I made the children of Israel dwell in Sukkot. Even though this is not celebrated on the anniversary of the Exodus, they first sat in their Sukkot when they left Egypt. We don't do it then. The Torah set a time that is appropriate for its commemoration. Now, there's many reasons why we understand. Why did Hashem say to do it in Tishrei? Why not do it right away? The one explanation I'll share with you, a very beautiful explanation, is our real celebration of these clouds of glory is what happened when the clouds of glory came back. Because when you're in the clouds, so to speak, after you get married, you left Egypt, we're married to Hashem, everything's so wonderful. So of course you're in the clouds. But what happens when, not if, when? Every single marriage goes through big bumps. And while we were celebrating our marriage with Hashem, the Jewish people fell, which we go through this every year to deal with what's missing in our relationship with Hashem. That was in the month of Tammuz. And we fell again in the month of Av. We fell. Terrible falling. And what do we do about that? Well, we rectified the situation, went to marriage counseling. We dealt with the problem. And we finally came back on Yom Kippur with Rosh Hashanah, a whole new dedication. And Yom Kippur received the second tablets. And guess what happened? Unbelievable. The clouds of glory returned. And that's when you come back to your loving relationship. Hashem took us back like we were when we left Egypt. And that's our celebration of the clouds of glory. Not when we were in the clouds in the beginning, when we were in clouds by the makeup, when after we messed up and we came back and we got the clouds back. This is what the Gra explains. That was actually exactly then on the 15th of Tishrei is when the clouds were returned to the Jewish people after they sinned. So that's our celebration. That's the highest celebration of the clouds of glory, that they're there. Now, I'll tell you something even deeper, as we see in Jeremiah. HaShem says this incredible verse, I'm going to remember your bridal days. It's a song we like to sing about how Hashem remembers our bridal days. We went into the desert. Kayamar Hashem, Zachati la chesed ne'urayich. Hashem says, I remember your bridal days, the love of our marriage, that you went into the desert to be with me. Well, the next verse is, therefore, I'm going to bring terrible destruction to you. And it really, what it means is all pain and suffering that happens to us in this world is in the context of loving kindness. It's because I love you so much. I'm going to do whatever is necessary to make sure we can be together again. I'm going to purify you from whatever's wrong with you, whatever problems you may have, because I love you so much. I remember our bridal days. So in that same context, I think we could appreciate that the Sukkot, clouds of glory, that we celebrate, it is the clouds of glory that took us out of Egypt. Because it was those clouds, it was that dedication, it was that tremendous love that was in the beginning of the marriage that helped us persevere and helped that the clouds came back after we fell and returned to Hashem. It's because the dedication was done so well in the beginning. So right now we're in the dedication, and we really have to work on this to purify ourselves, to be totally in love with Hashem, to dedicate ourselves, and that will help us persevere through all difficulties along the way, because everything's okay as long as I'm with you. We'll get through this together. That's the celebration of Sukkot. Hanukkah and Purim, this is the amazing thing. These are rabbinical. God didn't say that, and still, this was instituted. It was by prophets. Purim, Hanukkah, there wasn't the prophecy, but it was all the rabbis got together and they understood clearly this is what Hashem, it was divine inspiration. It wasn't that level of prophecy, but 100% this is from Hashem, that is a time through history where that same rectification, that same illumination, that same manifestation of God that happened once happens again every single year. Hanukkah and Purim also involve the same concept. The same is true on the days mentioned in the scroll of, so that's one of the pointed out, even though it's rabbinical, it applied. And that's unlike many religious Jews don't celebrate the Day of Independence of Israel. You know, that there's arguments about it. I'm not getting into it. Of course, we must appreciate the state of Israel, and we must thank Hashem for it. Nobody should argue on that. But those who don't celebrate the day is because there's no holiness to that day. Who chose that day? We celebrate Israel. We mention it all the time. We should maybe on that day say thank you. But there isn't this concept. This concept in a Jewish holiday is that what happened once is happening again. And that we need to recognize on Hanukkah and Purim. Maybe there are some Israelis that think that the day they chose for the Independence Day is similar. I don't know. I don't think it's true. The same is true on the days mentioned in the scroll of fast. Now, this is really fascinating. There are many other days that none of us know about. They're very obscure. Very few even know they exist. This is in a Talmudic text called Megillas Tainis. And all these days were annulled. We don't celebrate them. They were annulled, however, because the Jews could not abide by them and were therefore exempted from commemorating them to stimulate their original light. I want you to appreciate this line. It's a really powerful line if you'll get the message. The leaders of the Jewish people have the responsibility of guiding the people according to their ability. Inasmuch our sages saw we weren't able, it was too difficult to celebrate or commemorate all these days, fast days, different celebrations or fasts. They said, we can't. It's too much. In the exile, we can't do it all. So what happens now? It's really fascinating. We don't celebrate it to stimulate the original light. Rather, Hashem gives us that light without any days of doing anything to get it. This is a very important concept, especially in today's day and age, where there's so much, so many different denominations of the Jewish people in the non-Jewish world. Everybody with their different group and their different level. How do we relate to it all? And really, one of the great sources of what's called baseless hatred, it really means discomfort. You're not my group. And pretty much, there's thousands of groups. Nobody's my group. It's just me and a few other guys are my group. Who's part of your clique, your group? So there's a serious problem in the world of I'm only part of a small group. Everyone else, I'll have a little respect maybe, but they're really not my kind of guy. That's baseless hatred. Let's learn a really powerful lesson from here, that when others are not on your level, we don't look down at them. If they can't, they can't. We have to deal with them according to who they are. We need to love them as you would love your own child who's not acting exactly how you want. So you don't dress like me, you don't act like me, not my kind of guy. He's your son, your flesh and blood, you love him, of course you're my kind of guy. We get past the differences. I deal with you according to who you are. And that's really how we need to look at every human being. This is core Judaism. The reason why God created one person in the world, when he created the world, was so that every human being should think, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The world was created for me. I'm like God's one and only child. Everyone needs to have that feeling about themselves, not to look down at others, but to have that feeling, a good feeling about yourself. You're not just another guy. You should recognize that the whole world was just for you. I want you to put this in the right context. The same way you feel to your children. Anyone who has more than one child knows exactly what I'm talking about. All my children know this, that each one of them are like my one and only. Each one knows you're my favorite, you're the best, because that's what a loving parent makes each child. He feels that, and each child knows that. My parent loves me like I'm the one and only. I was privileged to meet in Manchester a very great righteous man, a big tzaddik. They call him the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Segel. And I've spoken to countless people, many, many people who told me that their relationship with this pious rabbi it's not normal. It's like he's their father. They're so close. And that's really what every Torah scholar should be like towards every human being. That's how Hashem is towards every human being. And that's how we should emulate. And our relationship towards every human being should be that as if he's the whole world. He's a human being. It's called the Olam Katan. He's like a little world. And this, as if the whole world was created for him. Infinite love towards every human being. And that's how we need to look. They're not at this level, they're different than you. Okay, so talk to them according to who they are. Love them for who they are. If we're talking about somebody who's so evil, very rare, so off, you have to stay away, but it doesn't take away from your love of the person. You got to stay away. They're hurtful people, they're evil. But in general, most people, 99% of people are not that level of evil. They're different than you. Love them for who they are. View them as if they're everything. And talk to them on their level. I think that's a very powerful lesson we see from our sages, that since people couldn't handle it, okay, so we won't. And that's how you should relate to other people. So they're not at your level. They're not doing things you're doing. Okay, don't look down at them. Talk to them according to who they are. Guide them according to who they are. We will now explain each of these observances separately. The next chapter will go into each one. Chapter 8, really important chapter, go into each one of these festivals during the year and explain what this rectification on our yearly curriculum, what are we working on, now? What are you working on now? And it should really change your life. You know, the Jewish calendar, it's not just like a yo-yo. Well, now we're happy, now we're sad. It's all part of an exact process of growth. So we just started fresh with Passover, a whole new level of closeness to HaShem, and now we're in ER of completing that process of purification from illness. We should all be healthy and well and get rid of all viruses and all illnesses and be holy with HaShem in this new month. Thank you for joining. Have a good week and a good month.